right, let's bring in South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, great to see you. Thanks for being with us. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving with the family. So hostage releases are a good thing, but every day that this ceasefire is extended makes it more and more difficult for Israel to resume military operations.
Yeah, this is sort of a strategy by Hamas to drag it out. The Americans, I hope and pray they all get out, but they'll be the last to go. And as every day drags on, there's mounting pressure on Israel to restrict their military operations. The liberal media, the Democratic left, has another day to convince the American people Israel's gone too far. But here's what will eventually happen. There will be a point where the war resumes. And I would say this, without the destruction of Hamas, Israel will never know peace, and the Palestinians will never have a bright future. If you tried to construct a new governing group in Gaza, united with the West Bank, Palestinian-controlled, if you don't destroy Hamas, they will kill everybody. They did this before. So the Palestinians need Hamas destroyed. Israel needs Hamas destroyed, and every decent person in the world should wish for the destruction of Hamas.
You mentioned the American hostages. The CIA director, William Burns, was in Doha, Qatar, trying to strike some sort of a deal to get them released. We don't know what would potentially be in those negotiations, but U.S. policy dictates that you don't give any quid pro quo. It states specifically the U.S. government will make no concessions to individuals or groups holding official or private U.S. citizens hostage. It is U.S. government policy to deny hostage takers the benefits of ransom, prisoner releases, policy changes, or other acts of concession. I mean, when you take a look at some prisoner swaps we've done in the past, Iran, for example, seems to have been some sort of quid pro quo.
$6 billion to get people out of Iranian custody.
So what do you do to adhere to that policy and still try to get our people out?
I just think we're in a bind here. We've allowed Hamas to build up too strong. Iran's behind all of this. Iran doesn't feel threatened by using their proxies against Israel or American forces. So what I would do is up the pressure on Iran. I'd go to the source of the problem. If there are any more attacks on our troops in Syria and Iraq, I would hit Iranian targets inside of Iran. If these negotiations drag out, I would hold Iran accountable. The one thing we're not doing is going to the source of the problem, the Iranians.
Yeah. Dan Henninger wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal, which is definitely worth a read, in which he suggests that Hamas has gained the advantage here by using the hostages as leverage to get a ceasefire. He writes, quote, Hamas's planners and fighters look likely to survive without personal accountability for the 1,200 killed on October the 7th. Instead, the burden will fall on Israel to assent to talks with Hamas, whose goal remains removing the rest of Israel's more than 9 million people. As you pointed out, Senator, if Hamas survives, is Israel ever going to have peace?
Well, I like Dan, he's a smart guy. He's wrong. I have talked to Bibi. I've talked to everybody in their government. He's under enormous pressure in Israel. Bibi is to stop the truces, go after Hamas now. I support the idea of trying to get as many innocent people released as possible. But the idea that Israel would not destroy Hamas after October the 7th is implausible. The idea that Hamas still stands after this makes it impossible to give a better life to the Palestinians. To the Biden administration, quit handcuffing Israel. Quit trying to restrict their ability to destroy Hamas as soon as possible. After World War II, we destroyed Tokyo and Berlin. We didn't think twice about destroying the capital cities of our enemy. So if you told us after 9/11, you need to enter into a ceasefire with al-Qaeda, we'd have laughed you out of the room or probably done a lot worse. So October 7th was 30 9/11s for Israel. And the idea that within 6 weeks, the world would be calling for Israel to have a ceasefire with the people who slaughtered 1,200 of their citizens is hard for me to get my head around. So here's what I do know. The Israeli people are not going to allow Hamas to get away with this. I'm not going to allow American political systems to restrict the ability of Israel to defend itself. I will oppose any conditions on Israeli aid.
All right. One more quick question for you. Speaking of aid, and that is the supplemental that's now in the Senate. Aid for Israel, aid for Ukraine, also money for border security. 10 Democratic senators are circulating a letter saying that they don't want the border security money in there. Let's put them up on the screen so folks at home will know who they are. You have suggested that Greg Abbott the governor of Texas should stop sending migrants to New York City and instead send them to the 10 states of those senators represented there on the screen.
Yeah, I think I'm going to visit Texas pretty soon. We've had, on average, this week, 8,500 people show up at the border. Yesterday was 9,300. I think it gets worse as they see the end of Biden's term, not knowing if Trump's going to make it or not. You know, Trump may come back. I think you're going to see a run on the border. And it's not about money. We need policy changes. We need to change the parole law and the asylum law. That's a magnet. So these 10 senators, here's what I would say. You don't know what it's like to live with a broken border. The people in Texas have gone through hell and a lot of misery. The Democratic position is to remain in Texas. If I were Governor Abbott, I would take these 10 senators, and I would send thousands of illegal immigrants to their states to let them understand what it's like to live with a broken border. They are opposing legislation to stop this problem. They're not suffering the consequences of the problem. They need to experience the problem. And at the end of the day, until you can make this problem real, a lot of people are going to have this attitude. So my hope is that Governor Abbott will show the people in Rhode Island and Connecticut and Oregon, the people who signed this letter, what it's like to have your community overrun with people who are not here legally.
All right, we'll be watching for that visit to Texas. Senator, good to see you. Thank you.